take it last. Let me just say to you, fellow South Africans, that when I was elected leader of the Democratic Alliance 2 years ago, I received an overwhelming mandate to grow the party by bringing South Africans from all races together. And since then, we've set our sights at unseating the ANC from the government in order to save our country. Fellow South Africans, this project has never been more urgent. A corrupt cabal has captured the state for the purpose of personal enrichment. And our governing party appears to be powerless to act against it. As a result, our country faces an unprecedented economic crisis with jobs being lost every single day. If there was ever a time for a unity of purpose, I think that time is now. It is therefore deeply unfortunate that over the last few weeks, we have expended energy dealing with Helen Zilla's tweets on the 16th of March and the fallout that has resulted from it. Let me say this from the outset. Helen Zilla's record in fighting apartheid and her contribution to the people of South Africa, to a democratic South Africa, speaks for itself. But there's absolutely no question that her tweet and subsequent defense of it did damage to race relations in our country and set us back as a party. All of us, especially leaders in our society, must remain mindful that colonialism was not a victimless crime. Many South Africans suffered directly under colonialism and apartheid and continue to be disadvantaged by the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. I was personally angered by the tweets that were put forward by Helen Zille, and I know many others were as well. This is why I took immediate action to correct the impression that these were the views that were held by the DA. I wanted people to understand that, and without doubt, that under my leadership, the DA is working hard to reconcile South Africans, black and white, in pursuit of a common vision of progress and prosperity for all. And over the last few weeks, I've had several engagements with Helen Zilla on the subject of her tweet. We haven't always agreed on everything, and this is not necessarily a bad thing. I think, fellow South Africans, it's worth bearing that when I was elected leader, and I said this in 2015, that all of us are animated by the idea of building a better tomorrow. All of us carry the belief that out of the ashes of apartheid, a prosperous and a united South Africa can emerge. Sometimes we disagree with each other because we care too much about the future we want to build, and that is okay. It is healthy for us to engage in robust debate. But equally so, there is no room in this party for those who seek to divide or those who mobilize on race. We must challenge each other's ideas in a constructive manner. And for this is how we learn from each other and grow stronger. As leader, my job is to listen, it is to engage, and it is to set the political direction of the party. In the course of our engagements, Helen Zilla realized that her tweet and some of the communication that followed was hurtful to many people, and particularly black South Africans. Her acknowledgement of this is a huge step forward. It is important to me that Helen offered the South African public a fulsome and an unqualified apology. and I'm glad to say that she is now prepared to do that. Her willingness to admit wrongdoing and apologize is a quality that I believe sets her apart from many other political leaders in our country. Equally so, Helen has agreed that in the best interest of the party, for her to vacate her position on all decision-making structures of the party, including the Federal Executive, Federal Council, and Provincial Council. In addition, her political communication from this point onwards will focus on matters relating to the Western Cape Provincial Government, where she will remain Premier. If she wishes to communicate on any other political issue, she will abide by the sign-off process and protocols of the Democratic Alliance. Fellow South Africans, our nation has a proud history of reconciliation, and we must, wherever possible, put aside our differences in pursuit of a common good. I believe this agreement, in fact, allows us to draw a line under what an unfortunate episode and to move on in the best interests of all South Africans. This has not been an easy decision. And I think the alternative would be for us as a party to be embroiled in a protracted legal battle and lead up towards the 2019 election. I have no doubt that this, in fact, would have caused further damage into the organization had we embarked upon it, to the detriment of the South Africans and ultimately to the detriment of the project of leading a reconciled democratic center of non-racialism and constitutionalism. We've made a massive progress in the last few years, particularly in the cities that we've won in 2016 election and now in a coalition government have the responsibility to govern in Joburg, Tshwane, and Nelson Mandela Bay. And South Africans are beginning to see the good fruit that comes out of that, of clean government, of better services being rolled out for all, and particularly for the poor and marginalized. The Democratic Alliance will build a future that is free of oppression, where every person has the opportunity to prosper and live a life of value and of dignity. This, fellow South Africans, is our historic mission, and we need to redouble every effort to make it a reality. I'm going at this point pause and hand over to Helen.
Thanks very much, Mmusi. I'll take that. Are you able to hear me at the back? Yeah. I've never seen such a press scrum ever before. Good. After a period of debate and reflection, I recognize the offense caused by my tweet on the 16th of March 2017 with regard to the legacy of colonialism. I therefore apologize unreservedly to the South African public who were offended by this tweet and my subsequent explanation of it. In South Africa, colonialism and apartheid subjugated and oppressed a majority and benefited a minority on the basis of race. This is indeed indefensible, and I do not support, justify, praise, or promote it in any way. I realize the wounds of history that my tweet and subsequent defense of it has opened. In particular, I recognize that my actions were insensitive to South Africans who suffered under colonial oppression. For this, I am genuinely sorry. During this period, I have made public utterances that have had the effect of undermining the leader of the Democratic Alliance and the project that he is leading. I greatly regret this too. Mmusi Maimane is the democratically elected leader of the DA, and we must all get behind his leadership. My intention now is to do everything I can to restore public trust that has been eroded. Now more than ever, we need to unite behind a shared vision of one nation with one future. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Right. Friends, we have a very pressured program today, so we're going to take only 4 or 5 questions. I'll recognize you in random order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Where did you get
Thank
that?
you so much. Sigi Madia from News 24. 2 questions, 2 very quick questions. Helen, the first one's to you. You're apologizing now, saying you kind of recognize the error of the comments you made, the tweets and the defense. Please help us understand why then did you continue with them? Because right throughout, people were saying to you, it is insensitive. People were saying to you, it's not accurate, and you're hurting many South Africans. Yet you continue to defend your tweets. So I want to try and understand how suddenly there's a turnaround. Secondly, Mmusi, the EFF has made comments about what they expect to happen. A lot of South Africans have also said they'd be happy to see the DA actually get rid of Helen, not only in leadership structures, but in the legislature as well, saying she's got to be removed as premier. That doesn't seem to be the case. What are they supposed to make of that? Because a lot of people are saying they will not be happy, particularly the black people, including black leaders in the DA from Soweto, saying Helen has got to go. The DA has to choose whether it grows with us, the black majority, or if it respects and retains Helen Zilla. Thank you.
One question, please.
Thank you. It's Tula Sizwe from ENCA. Mmusi, Tsidi has covered me in as far as the first question is concerned. How is what you are doing different from what the ANC does whenever President Jacob Zuma does something that's totally unacceptable? To say party unity. You're basically placing party unity above, what consequences should have been meted out to Helen Zille. And Helen Zille, my question to you is, recently you were asked by a radio presenter about your comments when you were saying that not all aspects of colonialism were bad. This presenter said to you, well, someone can say the Nazis in Germany also did some things, achieved some things, and you said there's no comparing colonialism with that genocide. I'd like to understand how the two are not comparable. Didn't colonialism lead to a lot of black South Africans, black Africans being enslaved, being killed, being tortured, being butchered? And didn't it lead directly to apartheid? And in that way, led to the deaths of countless people who cannot be quantified in terms of number?
Mrs. Zilla, sorry, you made a presentation last week to the DA's Federal Executive where you were very committed and adamant that you were going to sit out this conflict, or fight rather. At what point over the last couple of days did you realize that it was futile, and what moved you to reach the agreement with the leader?
Thank you very much, Clement Manyatela from Eyewitness News. Mrs. Zilla, you now, I think you admit that your tweets violated many South Africans. Do you think an apology is enough? Also, in the reasons that you submitted to the Federal Executive, you pointed out that your suspension would do harm than good in 2019, and you said this would cause an embarrassment if you're not involved in caucus meetings in the Western Cape. Do you still hold this view? And do you still hold the view that if you are suspended from these party structures, there's going to be a negative impact on how the DA performs in 2019? And Mr. Maimane, does this have anything to do with what the EFF said? Thanks.
Good afternoon, Aldrin Sampier from SABC TV News. Mrs. Zilla, in your submission to the FedEx, one of the submissions that you made was that the reason that this is happening is because that you are not white. Sorry, that you are not black, and that's the reason that you feel that the FedEx hasn't been following the procedures of the party and the constitution of the party. And the final question is, has anyone approached you to start your own political party?
Do you want to answer first, and then I'll just wrap up at the end?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks very much. Okay, first Tsidi's question. Why the turnaround? Every idea that I hold is provisional until a better argument comes up. I hold my ideas firmly, but the very process of evolution in anybody's thinking and in ideas in society is a result of engagement and discussion. And if you haven't got a closed mind, you come out of those discussions with a different way of seeing things. Now, the leader has called me in on numerous occasions. We've had a lot of discussions. I also have with fellow members of the party, and as I hope I always have done, have reflected very hard on what they have said to me and changed my position. As everybody knows, I can hold a position very strongly, and I can argue the case very determinedly. But I am not impervious to good, rational, sound argument, because that is what all open-minded people should be. And so that is exactly why I reconsidered it. And the leader has also spoken, for example, about the road to reconciliation and what is required of it, that reconciliation is the project that he wants to lead. And I took that very seriously. Right, that's the first question. Then there's Tula Sizwe Simelane. Yeah. Look, if I was giving an academic seminar, we could go into this in quite some detail, but I don't think it's appropriate to do so. You may or may not know that a very large number of my relatives were murdered in the genocide of the Holocaust in Germany. And 9 direct uncles and aunts died in the death camps of Germany, and my parents were very lucky to survive as refugees. So the legacy also lives with me, and I understand it. Certainly, large aspects of colonialism had strong elements of genocide, but they are not directly equatable, and neither is defensible. Right, then what made me change my mind, Peter? That's what you asked me, hey? Peter, yeah, okay. What made me change my mind? I suppose my first instinct is to fight back. And my second instinct is to consider the methods. And my third instinct is to think what will be the best course into the future, and looking back in 10, 15 years, what will have been the best for our project. And it's a project that certainly Mmusi, the leader of this party, and I share completely in the vision for a prosperous country under constitutionalism, non-racialism, and the rule of law. There is absolutely no difference between us. Now, I have to think, in 15 years' time, what will have been best for this vision? And so when my first instinct to get a bald fist and fight back subsides, I can think a little bit more deeply and clearly about that. And that has been one of the substances of our conversations over the last couple of weeks. So I believe, A, that I did hurt a lot of people, and I believe that I am an empathetic person and I don't want to hurt anybody, although I don't shy away from tough debates. And believe me, people say very hurtful things to me, but that is no excuse for me to say hurtful things to people. That's the first reason. And the second reason is we've got a very big project to run in this country, and if it fails, South Africa fails. And I don't want it to be part of helping it fail. I need to be part of helping it succeed. Then Clement. Oh, whether not being in caucus meetings is going to be a problem. Look, I do have to be in caucus meetings. And I don't think that caucus meetings are included. Provincial council is included, federal council is included, and the federal executive is included. And frankly, I think that's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing, because when you're the leader of a party, you don't want the ex-leader hovering around having opinions. in places where decisions are made. I really think it's very difficult and probably not appropriate at all. So I think it is appropriate that I stand down from those bodies, and perhaps I should have done that long ago. But not out of a caucus, because a caucus is essential to running a good government. And we don't discuss general party matters, and it's certainly not a party decision-making body. It discusses DA policy in relation to legislation and what we are doing in the provincial government. So I don't think that that falls foul of the agreement that we've reached. So the first three bodies that I've asked not to be a part of, I think is absolutely rational and right, that I need to be part of the caucus, otherwise we can't govern properly. And then, oh yes, look. In a sensitively race-divided society, it is just true that who you are determines how what you say is taken up. For example, if a Jew makes an anti-Semitic remark, or what can be interpreted as an anti-Semitic remark, everybody laughs, but it doesn't work the other way around. And perhaps because of all the stuff I've been through, and because if anybody goes through my timeline, you'll see how rude so many people are to me, maybe I get a bit less sensitive than I need to be in replying, and maybe my instinct to take a firm line is not always interpreted in the way I intend it to be interpreted. I would never have survived this far in politics had I been particularly sensitive, and I would have never survived this far in politics had I been quick to take offense. And perhaps I don't empathize enough with the offense that other people take, but I also do believe very strongly that there are some things that the origin of the speaker makes a difference to what is heard. And I think this is one of those cases.
So my question on 2019 project, do you still think if you're not part of the party structures, the DA will have a negative, the DA will not perform well in 2019?
Look, I've never thought that if I wasn't part of the decision-making structures, the DA wouldn't perform well. Of course the DA will perform well. I mean, I don't need to be part of the decision-making structures for the DA to perform. I'm not the leader anymore. I stepped down two years ago now already. So the bottom line is my being in those structures has got nothing to do whether or not the DA performs well. If we run a decent government in the Western Cape, it will help the DA's project. And that is certainly what I'm very, very committed to doing. But I don't want to do anything at all that undermines this critical project. Because if we can't defend our constitution and build a non-racial inclusive society, then none of our children have a future, none. And that's what it has to be about.
So just a question on whether anyone
Sorry.
approached you to start your own political party?
Well, I'm not going to tell a lie, yes, but I said no.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I just want to respond to just a few questions that were asked to me. TD, of course, many people will ask the question that we should remove Premier Zille. I think it's always important as South Africans to understand the context upon which we operate, the legal framework within which all of these take, and to further affirm the fact that I found the tweets offensive. They hurt many South Africans. They were a massive distraction for the party. I was very strong. I condemn all of those tweets. I also have to consider the type of government we run in the Western Cape. Helen Zilla runs a good government. And in fact, in a world comparable to other premiers in society, I must then be able to consider whether or not that in fact Helen, in her job as the Western Cape Premier, must continue to do that. And therefore, her communication will be limited to that. The focus is that she must build a good government then. And I believe that without doubt, that when we lead a reconciliation project, of course, we're going to have different discussions. We're going to be angered by many statements. But we have a choice. We have to make the choice about reconciliation. I think it is what Nelson Mandela stood for. It is the idea that, in fact, even if we may disagree, reconciliation is always better because we're better together. I think that's important to take forward. And I wanted to ensure that the party can move on and focus on the objectives for 2019. And I do think the step that we've taken to ask Helen to step away from all decision-making structures, to limit her communication, and the apology that she's issued today indicates the very essence of how we need to take these discussions going forward. So, without doubt, Thula Sizwe, I think it would be unfortunate if we got into a discussion of saying what Jacob Zuma is doing and what Helen Zilla's views are exactly the same things. Jacob Zuma has been found to have violated the Constitution by the Constitutional Court. Believe you me, if the same finding was found about Helen Zilla in a Constitutional Court, this would not be the discussion we are having today. That must be very clear. That's the first thing. The second issue is simply this, that this question about party unity, in fact, goes broad. We must ask ourselves the question, what is the South Africa we want to see? What is the reconciliation project and where is it at? And therefore, if you sat with me and you said to me the best way we can go forward is to say, whether we disagree on statements or not, that we can't find adequate discourse, we can't guide the way forward, then I really fear, Thula Sizwe, that South Africa will suffer and set back this reconciliation project, which still remains critical. And ultimately, as I've maintained, that the work that Helen must do in government must continue, and certainly in the next 18 months, which I think is the term of office that's left, we must then continue to ensure that we achieve the objectives we've set out in the Western Cape. For if ultimately we are going to achieve anything in 2019, whilst other political parties have foregone this stance that says an unracial South Africa is still possible, black and white South Africans can work together and charter a way forward, I think that remains still possible. And when we steer away from that, I think we run a very dangerous risk. And we've got to act within what is appropriate and what is right for the project of reconciliation to continue. I think someone asked the question about a legal protracted battle, of course. Matters such as these ones also require sincere reflection and discussion. This is the South Africa we want. This is the country I want to build. And I think when we set out on a course and I began engagements with Helen, at first we couldn't find each other on this issue, but we needed to have a continued discussion. And I was very clear that I didn't accept what she was saying. And I think the apology that she's issued today reflects that, in fact, in this way we can come to a point where we say, yes, it was unacceptable, and that she has apologized for. So in the question about the variables around the EFF, I think it's important that we note that, yes, in this particular project, we have, if we're going to achieve anything in 2019, we need to govern well. We need to govern well in the cities that we're in coalition with. And I think, without doubt, many other political leaders have said things that are completely outrageous. I think, in fact, even the leader of the EFF have said things that I think fall foul of the Constitution of the Republic. And therefore, when we take such actions, I don't get involved with the EFF's processes. And I think it would be necessary for us to, when we, as the only party in South Africa that in fact still stands for both black and white, that we continue these discussions. Some are difficult, some are painful, but if we forego getting in a room and having tough discussions, I really believe we'll build a nation that is born out of an eye for an eye. And ultimately, the natural outcome for that is a blind nation. Mine would be to rather have a nation with open eyes, where we can open each other to our realities, to our histories, to our pains, so that we get to a point where we say, actually, to walk forward, this is the best way we can do it. And I would urge any South African that we must never lose touch of that project. And as difficult as this decision has been, I think we require courage as leaders to be able to stand up and say, we are never going to lose track of the reconciliation project. That those who want to pull us to extreme angles of this issue certainly don't help build the society we want to build. So I would urge that we focus on governing in Joburg, focus on governing in NMB, and ultimately, and focus on governing in Tshwane, recognizing that to achieve anything of substance in 2019, it will require the project of a reconciled South Africa where black and white can work together for us to govern as best as we can for the people of South Africa. That we must achieve. If we fail at those objectives, we will struggle. I think you asked me the question whether members of FedEx, this was not a decision about a contestation from one race against another. I lead an organization where there's a diversity of views. We've always had that. Some views are expressed by different South Africans. And I want to urge and affirm that even when I spoke to the federal executive and highlighted the nature of where this matter must go, what the project is about, and that in fact their members could give input to that, I felt the federal executive was unanimous in that decision. And yes, we start at different points, but we are better together in a reconciled South Africa, in what the father of our nation, Nelson Mandela, bequeathed to us, starts a journey where ultimately in 2019, if we are to succeed, it's got to be a success for all South Africans, not just for any particular race. For ultimately, my dream is that black and white South Africans can work together to address that historical injustice so we build a future for all. That is the DI I want to build. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Should we just open up here, please? We're not going to do any interviews. We're just going to... Let's go this way, guys.
Mrs. Zilla, there were good aspects to colonialism. Are you apologizing for expressing the views, or are you apologizing for holding them? You still hold them. Can you change your mind? Where there's good aspects to colonialism?
Yes.
You still hold the views?
That's a good question.
Sorry guys, can I just open up the way here? Can I open up the way here, please? Sorry,
You don't believe that there were any?
I don't. It's really good about colonialism.
Thank you.
You get it? You get it? Yeah, even if it's not nice, it's fine. Yeah, because it's one thing to apologize because you've been called. It's another one you've changed your mind. That's what I want to. And I was not even trying to be causing chaos. No, just we need that clarity.
English is not a mother tongue.
Do you want to cross now or do you want to wait?